Right guys, so the first thing that we need to do to get the upgrade started is to make sure the Ultimaker is unplugged. The next thing that we're going to be doing is we've got all the parts on the left hand side, right over here on the left, and we are going to be removing the back cover for the motors on the left hand side. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be turning the Ultimaker and we're going to be removing the screw on the left hand side right over here. So we need to remove this cover. You're going to need a Allen key for it, and that's what I've got here. So the next thing that we need to do is, once we've removed the left back side panel, is to remove the last screw to open up the cover, which would be located at the bottom of the Ultimaker. Okay, once the back screw has been taken out, you can move the Ultimaker back, and what we can do then is move the build plate down that we can get the back cover out. So we just reach in there and we just remove it out like that. So only the two screws on either side, right over here and the other side over here. So this is the back plate. Just put that aside. Make sure you put all the screws in one section, because we're going to need to put them back in. Okay, once the back plate has been removed, the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be undoing the bottom section where the main board of the Ultimaker is. So for that step, we can just raise the bolt plate slightly just to get access to the small little screws at the bottom of the Ultimaker, which is at the bottom here. The screws for the bottom cover is located at the bottom of the Ultimaker. You'll see there's 4 sets of screws. The first set of the screws, this one over here, as well as that one on the left over here, you won't be able to see it, that one over there, are the 2 screws that you're going to be removing. So what you can do is, to make it a bit easier, you can lay the Ultimaker on its side. Once the Ultimaker is on its side, what I would suggest is just to get some needle nose pliers or some shifting spanner, just to hold at the bottom section. I'll show you what I'm talking about. The screws that you're going to be getting at are the ones at the bottom over here. You'll see that there's 2 little nuts on either side, and that's what you're going to be using the needle nose pliers just to hold on. You can try and hold it with your fingers, but in that case it's going to be a bit difficult. So all you're going to be doing is holding it on one side and then unscrewing it. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be moving it back and holding it on, and just make sure once you have taken the nut and the bolt out, just to screw them back in, that you don't lose them.
Just put it to the side, and then you can move on to the other one just above it.
Alright, once the 2 screws have been removed from the Ultimaker's bottom, you can just turn the Ultimaker on its side just to gain access to the bottom section, which is this over here. Once those 2 screws are out, you'll see that the back plate comes off quite easily, and that will expose the bottom of the Ultimaker. You can just put that aside with the 2 screws, and the next step that we're going to be doing is we're going to be unscrewing the 4 screws that are located for the board. Is this one one on the side, and then just behind the wires on either side, those are the 4 screws that you're going to be seeing in the inside. So these 4 screws that I'm referring to are these last 2. The first 2 that we removed was for the plate, the cover plate. The next 4, these ones here, and then towards the back of the Ultimaker, behind the shafts, located over here, and over here is actually for the board. So those are the 4 screws that I'm going to be taking out now. The first screw, you'll notice between the board and the Ultimaker, there's a black little washer that separates the board. You just need to hold on that while you take out the screw, and just be sure to just keep it on the screw, and then proceed to take out all other of the 3 screws. For the last screw, you're going to most probably have to hold the Ultimaker's board in place that it's easier to get the screw out. The last section you can just use your fingers to undo. So the next thing that we need to do is, once we've got the main board off the Ultimaker and unscrewed, is we need to just get a flat screwdriver and remove the heater wires from the green section, the first terminals, just to press them in firmly, and then we're able to remove the cable out quite easily. So we remove both of them like that, and then we can just put that aside. Once we remove the hot end connections at the top, we can remove the fan, the hot end fan, which is the blue and orange connection located towards the middle, just underneath the eye in the Ultimaker. One can just wiggle that a little bit and then remove that and put that aside. Once you've removed the connection from the middle, the next one that you're going to be removing is the feeder motor, which is located towards the top, which is E1. That is the green, black, and blue and red from E1. You can just wiggle that out and then pull that aside. You can just remove the ferrite magnet around the motor wires. You can just put that aside. That's just basically a magnet. Right, now that's been taken out. We need to take out the PT100 sensor, which is the one located just underneath the Ultimaker sign, underneath temp 1. You can just lift this cable connection or clamp and then just wiggle it out. It comes out quite easily. And that is the red and silver connection. You can just put that aside as well. The next step would be to remove the print head fans, and that is found on the left hand side just next to the switch, and that is fan PWM, and the colors are yellow and green. Yet again, just lift the clip and remove the cable. Right, once all of the cables are unplugged, that is going to be it. We can just start guiding them slowly at the bottom end into the main print area. Remember to take the feeding motor cable back out as well. Right, then what you're going to be having is you're going to be having 2 harnesses. One would be the complete print head with all the sensors and the fans. And the other thing you're going to be having is the feeder motor. So these are the 2 sections that you have. What you can do is just push the harness, the main print head harness, through the hole. And then the next step we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing the feed motor and installing the new one. Okay, once you've got the harness out, you can flip the Ultimaker back up, stand it back up. Just watch out for the board because it's loose now. So this is the harness here, and what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be removing the feed mechanism as well as the motor inside. Right, you just need another Allen tool, and then you're going to be removing all the screws. The last time you're going to have to deal with this feeder. Right, on the last screw, don't do it just yet. Make sure to hold on to the motor the motor's still loose at the back of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my right hand to hold onto that motor while I unscrew. Oh, maybe it'll be better that I hold it from the above. Just moving the bolt plate back down and undoing the screw. Okay, you'll feel on the last screw, it will loosen up the motor, and you can just pull the motor right out. The horrible motor. And you can just put that aside and keep the last screw, put that aside. And then, okay, once we've removed the old motor and we've put it aside, we're going to be taking the new motor and we're going to be fitting it. But what you need to do is you're going to have to open up your grease, and you're going to be greasing around either corner of the new motor's gears. So what I'm going to do now is just undo these 4 screws quickly, and then I'm going to take the aluminium plate off. Once you've got the motor, the new motor, and you've greased everything, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be feeding it into the motor section. Be sure to remove the old or the new feeder's back plate, which is this one over here. This one actually goes into the feeder. One can just separate it quite easily, and this is what you're going to be fixing onto the Ultimaker. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be using the long side for the top, and then the bottom section will just fit in like that. So you will have a bag full of screws that came with the building plate clamp and some grease. That's the same bag that you're going to be using. You'll see that there's a couple of screws. There are 2 different styles of screws. There's a longer screw that would go into the motor, and then there are 2 shorter screws. Those shorter screws with the small little washers, the nylon washers, will go on the outside of the new feeder. So the shorter ones will be screwed on at the top and the bottom. And what you will do is the old screws that you remove from your motor, you're going to be taking the washers off of those screws, and you're going to be using it on the longer screws that you're going to be using to mount onto the new motor. So what you can do is just swap everything around, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be feeding the motor from the back of the Ultimaker. Just remember that the writing goes towards the top. The cables will be leaning down from the back, and you will just feed it into the Ultimaker like that. And then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking your plate and putting it over like that. Then what you can do right after that is you can take the longer style screws with the old washers, and you can just easily slide them in, and then just secure the first screw, and just to make sure that the motor doesn't drop from the back. You don't have to do it all the way in. And once one's screwed onto it, then the motor is nicely fixed. You can release your hand, and then what you can do is do the next set of screws. Right, so once all the screws have been done, you'll see that the washers line up quite nicely. The motor's nice and snug at the back. And then what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be fixing the new style feeder onto the plate, and we're going to be screwing them down. So that will be the next thing I need to do. So all you need to do is make sure you have the 2 smaller sets of screws and the 2 nylon washers that came with it. I've got the nylon fed on. You can just take the unit. Just make sure when you fit the new style feeder that the gears inside the actual feeder and the gears on the motor line up, that you can push it nicely. Otherwise you're going to be trying to force it, you might break something. Okay, so once you've screwed both screws in, then you are basically ready to put the cover on. Alright, so once you've got the screw located at the top and the bottom, you can put the cover back on. What I would suggest is to feed all the small loose items in the connection first at the bottom. The small little guiding ring at the bottom of the section, you can just slide that in. And then the top clip goes at the top, obviously. And then what you can do is just line everything up nicely. And you'll hear it clip in. Then you can take the original screws that you removed and you can just slide them back in, and then you can just close it up. Alright, so once we've got the back feeder and the motor plugged in and connected, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving over to the front of the Ultimaker, and we're going to be replacing the clips in the front. Alright, so the next thing to do is we're going to be removing the glass bed to remove the clips and replace the clips on either side. So what I need to do is just lift up the bolt plate slightly. Make sure not to push it too fast, because you're sending electricity, or these things generate power, and you don't want to damage any of your electronics. Right, the next set would be to remove the clips. The clips are extremely sharp on either side, so I normally just use needle nose pliers, and I open up the clips on either side. You can just hear how sharp they are. And then you can just pull your glass plate out. Boom. Okay, once that's done, we're going to be unscrewing the two connections on either side. Okay, when you get towards the top of the screw, you'll feel it become a little bit looser. Just grab onto the bottom connection and then just carry on screwing up slightly. And you'll see that the screw will start feeding up by itself. And you can just try and guide it with your hands without cutting yourself. Okay, you've got the screw, and then you drop it. Okay, well, I'm just going to be screwing it into the nut for now, and I'm going to be removing the blade from, and then we're going to be taking our replacement clip, and we will just make sure it's the right one. You've got two, one for the right hand side and one for the left hand side. How you determine that is the connection is furthest to the right or left, so you'll see it like that. So what you'll do is you'll take the clamp and you'll slide it between the spring very carefully. Not drop it like I have, like that. Don't do that. See, the spring is a little, what the hell was that? Okay, sorry, that was the washer. This is not as easy as they made it look out in the video. At least everybody will be able to see me struggle. That's the main thing. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken the clip and I've slid it between the spring. So the spring towards the top. Then what I'll do is the washer that dropped off the bolt plate was actually stuck on there. I don't know from heat or friction, but the washer just goes back onto the nut at the bottom, and you're going to be sliding it back in between the spring, and then you're going to be dropping the screw through. Just make sure to guide the hole correctly. Boom, done. Right, so that's basically what it'll look like. Right, the next side, we need to just undo that screw. This will go a lot quicker because I know what I'm doing now. Don't always believe everything you see on the internet. You can actually push your bolt plate through, holding on the screw, and just undo the screw that way if you want to do it quicker. Make sure to put your washer on there, and it'll actually be a good time to clean this. Seems like it's full of... Okay. Can you get that or not?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay.
I can't zoom in anymore.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, you get your other washer for the right hand side, and you drop it first, and then you slide it in between the aluminium plate. Oh, that'll actually work even better. Just lift it, put it in, boom. Unscrew it again. Slide it in from the bottom. It actually worked very well. And then put the screw back in. Hold it at the top, and then just start threading it through, and make sure you don't thread it incorrectly like I did first. I don't know if that feels right though. Yeah, it does. Okay, cool. Okay, boom, done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to tighten up the nuts. I'm just going to put pressure down on the top of it and just turn it either side, just applying pressure. Actually, what you could do is hold this aluminium top, put your finger down on the connection, and then just screw the bottom section in, and boom, done. Oh, those are so much better. I mean, these are the old clamps that got removed. There's absolutely no place to grip on. At least they've thought about that, and they've made little arms that you can grab on instead of cutting your finger like my bleeding fingers are here. Right, so once that's done, you can just grab your glass again, and then you can just slide it back in like that. And oh, that works pretty well. And then you could just close it. So these are the clamps. The setting up of the clamps, you can see it's a lot easier to open and close. It's much better. All right, the next step is to remove the print shaft, the printer shafts with the tools that are provided. You'll see on either side there are small little grooves that the print shaft is going to be going into. So if you slide them in like that, you'll see that on the side, on the corner over here, it's nicely seated in. And then what you're going to be doing is looking for the other one, and you're going to be sliding that in. And then what you can do is you can just pull up on that, and then you can take it over to the other side. And once that's in, you can pull them up. Right, then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving to the other shaft, and that one broke. Don't believe it, they broke. Bastards. Okay, anyways. Right, the back and front shafts just need to be pushed down instead of pulled up. As you can see, my tool is broken, so I'm gonna have to try and see if I can make a plan here. Oh, well, it's maybe a good thing because it's still working. I'm just flipping it upside down, holding onto the shaft, and then pushing down and moving them over to the front. And then pushing down. Okay. Okay, once they're out, you can just move these belts just to the side that they don't clip back in. And once that's done, this whole thing should come loose. And what you can do is just move it to the side, or actually pull them out. I suppose that'll work as well. Right, and you can remove the whole old head and put that aside, throw it away, burn it, whatever you want. I want to see these rods. These rods look alright. I thought they were problematic. Right, once you've got the print or old print head out, you're going to grab onto your new one, and you'll see that there's two shafts that you removed. In the new one, the long shaft goes from left to right, and the short one goes from front to back. What you can do is you just drop it in, and at an angle, and just make sure to turn these items or these belts that you're able to clip them in. Okay, once you've got it sort of aligned, you can just use the tools to clip them back in. Right, the next step is once you've got the head in, we're going to be clipping and feeding the cables back in. So what you can do is move your Ultimaker or turn your Ultimaker. Then what we're going to be doing is putting the Bowden tube back in, so you can remove this blue clip, drop it, and then feed the tube back in till it stops, and then just slide the plastic clip over. Right, once that's done, you're going to be feeding these cables back into the hole, like so. Right, and what you can do is just flip the Ultimaker back around, and then you'll see the cables being pushed through. Yet again, lift the Ultimaker's bolt plate. Okay. Once it's done, then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be feeding the cable from the head as well as the new feed motor back down into the bottom of the Ultimaker's hole, which we're going to do now. So I'm just going to feed it towards the bottom. Actually, what I should do is just lay it on its side. What we're doing is we're going to be feeding the cables. Don't know if this will fit through, but let's try anyways. Yeah, that works. There's got tape on it, which helps to push it in a little bit. Okay. Once they're on the other side, the last thing to do is just to bring the last cable through. And then pull everything through. Make sure everything is neat. Okay, so that's basically that. Now we can start with the clipping in on the new connections. So what I'm going to do is just undo the tape that they've taped all the cables with. Right, like that. So the first cable we're going to be doing is the blue and the orange. I think this was for the fan. This goes to the middle of the board, and it says 5 volt fan, and you can just slide that one back in. It can only fit one way. It's got guiding connections, so you can only insert it one way. It'll clip in, and that's the first connection. The next one is the PT100 sensor, which is completely white. There are 2 sets of white, but one's got actual head on it that will go into the bottom of the board where it says temp 1. That's just underneath the A and the K of the Ultimaker sign. This can also go in one way to temp 1, and you can just slide it in until it clips in, and then we can move on to the next one. Right, the next cable is the green and the yellow. This is the fan. This will go onto the far left hand side, just next to the switch, the left, the on and off switch. This is fan PWM, and this can go in one way. It'll slide in and clip down. Okay, the next one is the motor. That's the one with 4 connections, the blue, red, like green and black. This one will go towards the top of the board to E1, next to the other motors. That will also go in one way. You can slide it in. So the next thing is the last cable, which goes to the heater cartridge. That will be plugged into the green connection towards the first. You're going to need a flat screwdriver again. When you get the flat screwdriver, you can just feed the first connection into the first hole of the first set. Okay, you can just tug on it a couple of times just to make sure it's nicely inserted, and then the last one goes right next to it. Same thing, you're going to be using your screwdriver or your flat screwdriver. Just make sure that if the cables become a little bit frayed, you can just hold on to them, squeeze, and then just rotate that they stick together, and press down on it and force it in like that. Once the last cable gets connected, you can just basically move all the cables into their respected places, because we're going to be putting the board back on. So what you can do is just make sure all of the cables are not in the way. Just put them nicely underneath, make sure all the connections are still there. And then what we're going to do next is put the board back in. Alright, I don't know if you guys can see that, but what I've done, I thought which would be a bit easier, is to take the screws with the washers, because they're behind the board. What I did is I slid the screw into the board first, like that, and then what I did is I push it all the way through, put the washer in, and then just retract the screw a little bit. So then, right, so then what you'll end up having is the 2 screws basically balancing with the washers or the spacers, and then what you can do is just slowly work your way back and put the board back into the gaps. And once they're sort of in place, the washers might be in the way, so you might need to just push them in slightly. Like that one ain't working with me. The top one went through fine, so the idea definitely works. I think there's a cable in the way. Gee, these guys make it so easy. Ah, there we go. Right, so a bit of a trick would be keep the washers where they are with the spacers. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be just wedging the board in. So as it is currently in here, what you're doing is you're pushing the board in that way, and then you're going to be moving it through. So what you do is you line up the power switch with the back, and that, so it's in at an angle, and then you can just easily slide it up like that towards these sections here. Then it should line up perfectly. Then the back should be there. You can just hold it in, get your Allen key, and try and screw them in. I'm just doing it with my hand for the time being, just to catch the board. I'll flip it over once it's okay. Alright, so the board is somewhat fixed, it's just a little bit loose, but nonetheless you can see it is in. Then the next set would be the front end. And the same thing, I'm going to slide them in from the top. I know you guys can see this, like that. Here again, I'm just feeling for the hole. Might be better to see the hole. Boom. Right. Once it's in, just pull the screw in halfway, take the washers, and then slide them on. I know you guys can't see that. Right, there we go, washers are on. Then I'm just going to just push them in with my hand, just screw them, catch the thread, same as the bottom, just catch the thread. Right, so once you've got the board in, or once I've got the board in, I'll tighten it up soon. Everything else is nicely in. The ferrite cord is nicely put in. I put it actually at the bottom here, which I shouldn't have, it goes towards the top. And all you have to do is line up the little holes. And once you've got them in, you can just press it in. Make sure these wires that lead up to the front display don't get caught or anything like that inside. There's no cables. Okay. There's a little clip at the bottom here that actually holds it in quite nicely. And all you need to do is feed the screw back into the bottom, like so. Just get your Allen screw or your Allen key and then put it in the one side. Once we've got both the screws in and everything's nicely tightened down, we can turn the Ultimaker back onto its feet. And all the cables should be fine there. And we're almost there. I'm going to just tighten up these screws for the board. Right, the last thing that we need to do is to put the cable cover or the motor cover back on. Where did I put the screws? Oh, it's these ones. Okay, I know where they are now. You're going to be moving the bolt plate down. Right, make sure that the bolt plate cable runs through the side. Make sure you don't clamp it down. On the side, I'm just guiding it in nicely. And that's what it should look like. There is a clip at the bottom to hold the plate in. I'm just trying to line it up now. Boom. You'll hear it clip in, and that's it. We'll take the two screws, you'll tighten the one side. The unit that the screw can attach. Once it's done, you'll know that it's quite firm. Other one goes into the bottom. Same thing, you'll hear it, and you can just tighten it up, and bam, that's it. And then basically the Ultimaker 2 upgrade is almost complete. Right, so that is basically the overview. There's still the option of doing the build leveling, which I'm not going to bore you guys with. And also doing the alignment of the belt. I don't think I'm going to need to do it. I'm going to print first and just see how the prints come out, but I didn't shift anything too much, so I don't think that's going to be necessary. The last thing is just to put on the stickers. All I need to do now is just insert the spool holder or the micro spool holder, and there we go. I need to just still stick the stickers on, which I'll do later, but I think that's basically it. The alignment I'll also do later. I don't think I'm going to need to align it as of yet, but I'm going to upgrade the firmware now, which you can do quite by yourself, but that is majority of all the hard work that I broke down for you. As you can see, it's not as easy as it looks. I definitely proved that. Alright, so that is the upgrade of the Ultimaker 2 to Ultimaker 2 Plus. The only thing I still need to do is put on the sticker, upgrade the firmware, which I'll do now. I might need to do a bit of alignment, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I'll definitely let you guys know how the Ultimaker 2 upgrade goes. If you guys found this video helpful and you enjoyed it, remember to give me a thumbs up, then at least know that the content is enjoyable and you guys are enjoying it. The other thing you guys can do is, if you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. There's a lot of cool new videos that are going to be coming out, so you guys will be notified. And yeah, I'll definitely guys see you in the next Makerspace. So if you found it helpful, remember to give me a hug. No,